It's great to be with you today and to talk about the spiritual practice of the Daily Examen. So this practice was developed by Ignatius of Loyola about 500 years ago. He was a priest and developed a series of spiritual exercises to help raise people's awareness of God in all things. He developed the Examen as a means of prayerful reflection, and it's sometimes called the examination of conscience. It's a practice which is really gaining popularity in the church as a whole and isn't limited to any denomination or age group. The actual process of doing the Daily Examen follows a simple 5-step plan, which is firstly to be still, then to give thanks, then to reflect and respond, and then look to the future with hope. And some of you might have seen it on these cards, which are really useful and great things to keep in your bag or beside the bed or in the car. They're a great prompt for this practice. And later on, we'll actually go through a Daily Examen together. When I was introduced to the Daily Examen, I wondered if it might be a sort of navel-gazing or send me on a guilt trip. But that's not the idea at all. It's about us wanting an authentic relationship with God, and therefore choosing to be open and vulnerable and to have honest conversations with him about details of our lives, which sometimes leads to celebration, sometimes confession, and leads us towards prayer and transformation. There are various ways to actually do the Examen, ranging from just a few minutes to a much lengthier once a week practice, maybe as part of a Sabbath. But it's more often practiced on a daily basis and takes about 15 minutes, maybe reflecting at the end of the day. I recommend experimenting with different ways of doing the Examen to find out what suits you and depending on what time you've got, and to be creative and have some fun with it. A quick and simple and fun way of doing the Daily Examen is just to use your hand. So it's a portable one you can use anywhere, and it starts by thinking of your thumb and just thinking, what would I like to thank God for today? And then we use our index finger, the one we point with, to look back over the previous hours and notice God at work in us and in the world around us. And then we look to the middle finger, the longest one, and consider what stood out. Something really good, or maybe something difficult. And then think of the ring finger that represents our commitments, our responsibilities, and consider if we've kept up with them in our work life, family life, or in society. And then we come to the little finger, which is the one we use for balance, if you're playing a violin or holding a cup of tea. And just ask yourself, how was the balance in my day today? And look back over your day and consider, what one thing would you like to change, or would you like to ask for God's help with? So that's one idea, which comes from the Jesuits. Another idea for the Examen that's recommended by some Franciscan friars is something that they always do at 12 o'clock noon. And the idea is all around 5 things, but it's quite different to the one we've looked at. So the idea is to think of 5 things that have happened earlier that day, things that you want to thank God for. And then think of 5 ways you failed that day. Mistakes, maybe having been impatient or gossiped, or times when you haven't done things as well as you could have. and ask for God's mercy. And then look to the rest of the day and think of 5 things you could use some help with and ask for God's help. So that's another nice way of doing the examen. But I wonder what Ignatius would have thought of those ideas. What we know about him from before he became a priest is that he was a soldier and his father owned a castle. And according to biographies, he was a bit of a character. He's been described as a fancy dresser, an expert dancer and a womanizer. He was involved in numerous duels and used his privileged status to escape prosecution for violent crimes. It took a cannonball injury in his leg and several surgeries without anaesthetic for him to give his attention and his heart to Jesus. So it seems likely that when he came to develop the Daily Examen, that he had quite a lot of life experiences to reflect on, and not all things he would have been proud of. And we all have a history, and maybe we've avoided reflecting on our past hours or years because it can be uncomfortable. But the examen can help us really learn from our experiences, stop repeating the same mistakes, and see a way forward. This is one of the things we have to accept with the practice of the Daily Examen. It embraces all aspects of being human. So it causes us to reflect on and celebrate the best moments and days in our lives. Times of joy, when we feel we've done well or have even been like Jesus to someone, our consolations. But also, it's inevitable for all of us that there will be times when our honest reflections draw our attention to our worst moments or days, our desolations, when we regret our actions or wrestle with negative feelings such as fear, heartache or anger. All of this is valuable and an essential part of the journey. So let's do the Daily Examen together. And I'll talk us through the process using the 5 steps. So first of all, our aim is to be still, to become aware of God's presence. So you might like to take a few deep breaths. Quiet your mind and still your body. You might like to close your eyes and gently relax into an awareness of God with you. And imagine him welcoming you. Next, we give thanks and review the day or the hours before with gratitude. We think back over that time and ask God to help us see those things through his eyes, paying attention to details such as the things you did, things you saw, the people you interacted with, even the food you ate. Spend a few moments savouring the details and give thanks. Then reflect on the actions and feelings you had during those past hours. Were there moments when you felt fully alive, when you felt at peace, happy, connected, challenged, close to God, your best self? Now remember anything for which you were less positive. Experiences which left you feeling drained of energy, frustrated, irritated, or alone. Less than your best self. Let's sit quietly for a few moments, not judging ourselves or others, just reflecting and noticing. Now we choose one joy or sorrow to talk to God about. It may have been a significant part of your day or a small detail. Your prayer may be one of praise and gratitude, or you may want to bring a memory to God and ask Him to meet a need, such as for healing, strength, patience or courage. Let's talk to God now about that one thing. And then the fifth step is to look forward to the next few hours or the day with hope. This is when we take a moment to commit the future to God and ask Him to guide us through the challenges ahead, and ask Him to help us have trust and hope. So let's look ahead with hope. So thank you for doing the Daily Examen with me. And however you choose to do it, I hope you'll make it part of your daily connection with God. I'll leave you with a quote from the Jesuits which says, "The more you practice the Examen, the easier and clearer it will become, shedding light on the path God has set out before you."